Thank you, Mustafa. I'd like to introduce the three-dimensional geometry perception by combining the morphological type and 4 new city indexes. I devised the morphological classification in 2000, and it's published in 2004 in the Annals of Thoracic Surgery, and listed in the plastic surgery textbook. And I revised in 2012. And this is the revised version, a little bit complex. And the CT index was conceived in early 2000, and it is presented in the CHEST meeting in 2004. The purpose of this study is how can we perceive 3D geometry of the deformity by combining morphological type and the CT indexes. This is going to be work as a communication tool between surgeons, and we can plan the repair by the results of this imagination, and we can assess the results. The patients comprise the since 1999 and today it's about the Pectus repair of 2,800. Pectus bar removal was 2,000. In total, about the 5,000 cases. Morphology was classified as symmetric and asymmetric, obviously, and asymmetric type was subdivided into eccentric and unbalanced. And the CT indexes were depression, asymmetry, eccentricity, and unbalanced index. 3D image can be estimated by the morphological type. We can imagine the shape of the deformity with the morphological type, and the 4-way indexes gives the severity and the degree of distortion to each deformity. So this is the symmetry. This is the eccentric asymmetry. This is Grand Canyon type long groove-like depression. This is a case I met in Mexico. It was a very scary patient. Actually, the patient had a heart totally on the right. He was not a dextrocardia, but the heart is displaced to the right. Challenging case. We had a lot of casualties during the combat, and finally we could achieve maybe 3 bars in. This is the unbalanced type. The division is the slope of both sides of the wall is different. Some other examples. This is a 1AG, which means the symmetric Grand Canyon, very long, groove-like, and this is asymmetric types. In summary, morphological classification can be divided into symmetric and asymmetric. Asymmetric is subdivided into eccentric and unbalanced. We can do the bar shaping following the given specific morphology. This is the morphology tailored bar shaping. And the new CT indexes were presented in the chest. As we all know, this is a very famous index. Everybody uses this one, and the Heller index. This is the ratio between the transverse diameter and the vertical. But I devised a new index, which is the depression index. This came out in 2000, but not published in the paper, just in the abstract book. Instead of the transverse diameter, I tried to measure the estimated height of the normal chest wall here, so the ratio between the normal and the reality. Why we need this one? Because Heller index is incorrect. The chest wall is, in other patients has a very wide, and the children has globular, so the transverse diameter is different from the age, and this doesn't do anything about the depression. So Heller index does not reflect accurate degree of chest wall depression. Instead, depression index directly indicated how depression is deep. You see here the people, the same Heller index on both cases, but the depression is different. Heller index of 6 is a very serious one, but as you see here, because the patient has large transverse diameter, the vice versa is here. The same depression, but the Heller index is very, very different. So depression index measures the depression directly, so like this way. When we see a depression index of 1.5, the depression, the bottom of the depression stands at the just the midway between the normal height and the vertebra. And the normal is a depression index of 1. As you see here, we can imagine how deep the depression is. DI1 is nothing, and the DI 1.5 and DI 2, like this way. So how can you measure the depression index asymmetry? This is a symmetric one, so no problem. And the eccentric one should be, we have to estimate the normal line, and then the unbalanced type is like this way, and the combined type is this way. And then later, recently, we have another index, the correction index, which came out from the United States. And it had a lot of applause from all of us, except me. This indicated exactly how the Heller index is incorrect. And then the authors devised a new index, which is correct. But I don't think it's correct, because in the symmetric types, that is the ratio between the red one and the white one. So in symmetry, well, both sides, the height is the same. But in asymmetry, we have different heights of on both sides. This is extremely different. So which height we can include in the equation to calculate the correction index? The authors, in the author's paper, they generally adopted the right side here. I don't know why, but in this case, this is incorrect. And another index is the asymmetry index, how asymmetric on both sides here. And the eccentricity index is how eccentric the depression is located. And the unbalance index is how the slope of the both sides is different. And this is a summary of the 4 indexes. So by this way, we can imagine how deep is the depression, how the depression is distorted, how the depression is asymmetric. The patient was all the patients I treated, and the index was like this way. Amazingly, in my series, I had 41% of the asymmetry. And 3D image rendering can be done by morphological type. This gives us a general information of the configuration. And if you want to know the details, we have to know how deep, how much asymmetric, how much eccentric, how much distorted. We can imagine a patient, not seeing any patient, just imagine the numbers here. So depression index is 2.0. So we can imagine that depression lies about the same distance between the vertebra here. And the asymmetry index is 1.3, so we can imagine the one side is a little bit higher than the other. And then eccentricity index is 2.0, so the center of the depression is deviated to somewhere. We can represent the R or L to give the side. And the unbalance index is 0, so this is the same slope. So we can imagine the patient type and the degree of depression or other things by the numbers given here. And we can use the assessment of results. This is the pre-op, and we can imagine, assess the result of the repair. And this very unbalanced type can be repaired this way, and we can measure the differential index AI or something. All indexes are approaching 0 after repair. In conclusion, we can imagine 3D picture with the classification system and 4 different indexes, and we can communicate with this tool and plan the repair. Just the indexes can give the volume to the deformity, so how it looks like we can imagine. So that we can assess the result of the, is there any residual, or the repair is symmetric or still asymmetric, that kind of way. As I mentioned earlier, we have a group of surgeons, the Cheswa International Group, and the meeting will be in Seoul, Korea next year. Thank you very much.